Dr. Jonathan Reed was a licensed child psychologist who lived in Seattle, Washington. On October 15, 1996, he was hiking in the Cascade Mountain Range 60 miles east of Seattle. He hiked in this area often with his 7-year-old golden retriever, Susie. While he was hiking, his dog Susie ran over a hill and out of sight from Reed. He assumed she was chasing wildlife until he heard her bark change into a more distressed tone. He quickly ran toward the noise, grabbing a large club-like branch along the way. Within 10 to 20 seconds of reaching the scene, Dr. Reed witnessed a child-sized, human-like creature effortlessly swinging about the 120-pound adult retriever. The creature proceeded to tear the animal in half by the jaw down the length of its body. Reed states that at this time the dog imploded into itself, vaporizing into a fine white powder. Without hesitation, Reed moved in quickly to attack the creature with his improvised club. The creature responded to the massive head trauma with an unsettling scream, then fell to the ground. At this moment, Reed became violently ill, losing control over all bodily functions. He struggled on the ground for what seemed like an hour until he heard an unusual harmonic humming sound. He initially perceived this sound to be the sound of other hikers in the area, so he slowly made his way to the source. What he found upon arrival was not the sound of fellow hikers, but an extremely unusual hovering object. This object, later dubbed the obelisk, was a three-dimensional six-sided craft, measuring 2.5 feet wide from top to bottom, 3.5 to 4 feet across, and 9 to 9.5 feet long. Reed claims that the surface was dark black and resembled marble or granite. When he touched the surface, he found it to be extremely cold, similar to dry ice. In addition, the sound emitted from the obelisk changed when he touched the surface, becoming a more pleasant tone. After a while, the doctor became dehydrated, so he returned to his backpack for water, where he found his 35mm camera and 8mm video camera. In attempts to prove his sanity, Reed began documenting the scene. He collected pictures and video of both the obelisk and the downed creature. As he was moving about documenting the scene, he found a small shiny metallic object, resembling a bracelet. This object was later called the Link artifact. When he finished photographing and videotaping the scene, he decided to stash the alien under a pile of rocks so that the wildlife could not reach it. He used a mylar emergency blanket to wrap up the creature and used the straps from his bag to secure it. Upon lifting the creature, Reed was surprised to find that it only weighed around 50 to 60 pounds. At this point, he changed his plans from burying the alien to bringing it back to his home. The walk back to the Jeep was approximately 5 to 7 miles, but Reed claimed that it felt like a much shorter hike. When he reached his vehicle, he placed the creature in the back seat and headed toward the nearest ranger station. When he arrived, he was unable to locate a ranger and was forced to continue alone back to his home, stopping frequently along the way as he was still very ill and continued to vomit. When he reached his home, he left the creature in the back of his vehicle while he collected himself. After an hour, he decided to move the wrapped entity from his Jeep to a standalone freezer located in his garage. At this point, he goes inside to try and recover both physically and mentally. After 6 restless hours, he decided to contact his close friend Gary. When his attempts to reach him fail, he went to the garage to film a brief examination of the being on his garage floor. Later, when Gary arrived, Reed explained the situation and allowed him to view the camera footage he collected. Shortly after, Gary assisted Reed in collecting blood and tissue samples from the creature. 3 days later, while Reed was out in his garage, he heard a scratching sound coming from the freezer. He assumed the noise was a result of a compressor in the freezer going out due to the age of the unit. He decided to verify his suspicions by checking on the thermometer inside of the freezer. Upon opening the lid, the creature sat up and started letting out what Dr. Reed described as a scream so forceful that he could feel the sound waves pushing on his chest. Frightened, Reed slammed the freezer door and ran inside his home. Once again, he called Gary for help. When he arrived, Gary knew the entity had been dead for days and assumed Reed was joking with him. After Dr. Reed showed him, he collapsed on the garage floor and started realizing the severity of the situation. Things remained under control until the 9th day. Reed was driving up to his house when he noticed several men in movers' jumpsuits taking everything out of his home. When he arrived several hours later, everything was either gone or completely destroyed. Reed managed to save a handful of pictures, a few distorted videos, the Link artifact, and samples of blood and tissue. To this day, that evidence protects his life and reinforces his story.